Good morning and welcome back to the MIT Sloan Sports Analytics Conference. We're very excited today to have the ticketing analytics panel here for you. It's presented by StubHub, and we've got a fantastic set of panelists. Going left to right, we've got Cole Gahagan from Ticketmaster. We've got Lou DePauli from the Pittsburgh Pirates. We've got Daniel Magid from StubHub, and Brian LaFamina from the NFL. Today's panel will be moderated by Jessica Gelman. She's a VP at the Craft Sports Group, where one of her responsibilities covers ticketing. We hope you enjoy the panel this morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you guys for getting up at 9 a.m. on Saturday. So I am really excited for this panel. We caught up last week for a quick call, or it was supposed to be, and we ended up talking for about 45 minutes. So there's a lot of really interesting things that I'm hoping we're going to be able to cover. But what I think is the most interesting about this group of panelists is, first of all, we have the league perspective, and also Brian has experience working in both the NBA and the NHL prior to the NFL. Danielle has fantastic experience, obviously, at StubHub, but prior to that, she actually worked with Brian at Madison Square Garden. Lou, in addition to his role now with the Pirates, used to run business development, the Teambo group at the NBA, and worked across the entire NBA looking at all different aspects, including ticketing. And then obviously Cole is one of the primary backbones behind ticketing in the sports industry. So this is a really good group, a lot of cross-pollination of ideas and information. So I'm going to start with Lou and then open it up for all of you guys to kind of talk on this topic in particular. But how do you approach pricing? And what are the creative ways that you look to drive revenues?
How do I look at pricing?
Yeah, from a strategic perspective.
I'm just taking our time. I just wanted to pretend like I was half awake like some of the people in the room. No offense. How many people just got in? I'm just kidding. Pricing is something that we talked about on our call, and I've met with some other folks here in the room, and when we were at Teambo, spent a lot of resources trying to help teams understand how much money there is available with proper strategic pricing decisions. And I think that's something that everybody probably could use a little bit better thought into. It's no more just, hey, we priced this way for so many years and we're going to go up $1, down $1, up $2. There are real ways to try to drive revenue or maximize your revenue opportunities with strategic and creative pricing decisions. And what you need is a lot of analytics on the back end to try to say, okay, if I were to increase these prices, how much? What are the real market values on the street? What are people paying on the secondary market? What are my own analytics telling me about this specific? Literally, we can go down and drill it down to the seat level if we need to. And then from there, once you build that model, is where you can then start making all of your other decisions on variable pricing, dynamic pricing, premium priced games, group sales discounts, season ticket discounts, et cetera. But the pricing decision is the number one fundamental thing from a team perspective of what you can do to really try to maximize revenues. Because again, our job from a team perspective is always try to maximize revenues. It would be very easy to say, I can take my best seats in the house and I can raise them 300%. But what will that do to attendance? So a project that we worked on with the Celtics when the new ownership group came in, and that's how I met Daryl Morey, was how far could you increase prices and what's the impact then on the number of tickets sold, which impacts your brand? So yeah, it's nice to be able to say, we increased our gate receipts from tickets by 60%, but they don't put the actual number of gate receipts, dollars you collected, in the box score in the paper. They put the number of attendance, right? So that becomes your public perception of your brand. So yes, you could easily jack the prices through the roof, but if the corresponding dip in ticket sales is too aggressive, then people are going to say that's the perception of your demand of your product, and you're going to wind up having less people purchase because they think the product is less in demand. So it's a very, very, nimble process. You have to make sure that you're trying to maximize revenues while not hurting yourself with the number of tickets sold, because again, that's your perception of people's demand in the marketplace.
So I think it'd be interesting for Danielle or Cole to provide some perspective on some of the data that they have been providing to you to help you with your decisions on pricing.
Well, so we have a deal with Major League Baseball, which is for all teams. And so as part of the deal, we're actually integrated on a cancel reissue basis with the barcode. And there's a ton of transparency into what baseball tickets are going for on StubHub. So Lou can look at every single transaction or his box office to understand, what people are paying at what day and what the average ticket prices are. And I'm assuming that you guys, most of the teams we know are using that. They're dumping it into spreadsheets and they're using that to more efficiently price,
Right.
where there's flexibility to be able to do that. So I think that's a ton of value that a lot of leagues and teams really want. And with the baseball relationship, they're able to get it for all the teams. Have you guys found it's been really effective?
Very effective.
Yeah.
What it really helped us do is, again, just take a step back for a second from the Pirates' perspective. We hadn't raised prices in 9 seasons, right? This is going to be my 4th season, and I've tried for the last few years to get us to rescale the park. For other factors we won't get into, but we didn't raise prices until this past year. But one of the things we're also dipping our toe in the water on is dynamic pricing, where we really felt this, the data from StubHub showed us, the ability to make more money off certain seats in the ballpark, but also the timing. Okay, so what's the apex of when people are going to spend more for their tickets versus maybe as you get really closer to the event, maybe it starts to fall off depending on what's going on. So we're going to roll out a dynamic seating program this year at PNC Park, where we're actually going to make it only available 10 days before every game. So there's going to be 1,400 seats available, and we figured by using that compressed window, that should be able to help drive the prices even further than they would be normally if I put them on sale 6 months in advance. Now again, it could also help self-correct some things. Maybe it'll be a little bit softer, but I really think there'll be more opportunity to be higher given the data that we've seen on the secondary market, what we see in our own sales trending, to be able to say, here's your 10-day window. It's already a supply and demand issue, right? Oh, it's only 10 days before the game, I gotta get my tickets. Great, well, people might be willing to pay a little bit more, and then we'll see how that flattens out or if it doesn't flatten out. So in our case, that was very helpful to help us decide how do we roll out a program like that and try something different.
In our world, we've shifted in the last couple of years from being strictly a technology company to being a technology and consulting business as it relates to pricing. Ticketmaster for years sort of had the viewpoint of my job is to provide the technology to you, the teams, or you, the venue, or you, the artist, to distribute your tickets and to sell those tickets, and didn't necessarily take on the role of my added job is to help you figure out the best way to price those tickets. And so what we've done to sort of shift that is really 2 things. One is that we have built the technology within our back-end platforms that our teams use to help them better price their tickets, using a host of data sources from Google Analytics to the secondary market, from Team Exchange and Ticket Exchange to Tickets Now, our secondary ticketing company, and then standard primary variables as well that help us dictate what that price should be. So a great example, it's not just about what is the ticket selling for in the marketplace right now, how many different price points should we have. It's also about what are the extraordinary events that are leading to variability, and how do we capitalize on that from not just a pricing perspective, but targeting the right offer to the customer. So a great example is probably the best example of an extraordinary event that happened this year, as everybody I think in this room probably knows, is Linsanity. So and if anybody does not know that term, let's meet out afterwards and I'll walk you through what that means. But in the last 3 months, less than that, in the last 2 months, we've seen a massive surge in demand and interest in Knicks tickets because of Jeremy Lin. But when it occurred, when Jeremy had that sort of breakout game, the week following, we saw sort of 3 data points that were important. We saw a 9x increase in Google queries for Knicks tickets. We saw a 7x increase in traffic on Ticketmaster.com in searches and queries for Knicks. And then we ultimately saw a 5x increase in Knicks sales. So it's not just a matter of, the obvious is that we know that there's going to be high demand. When LeBron went to Miami, when Melo went to New York last year, when Jeremy has the season like he's having now, the obvious factor is that there's going to be higher demand. Higher demand is going to afford an opportunity to charge more for that ticket. But it's not just a matter of being able to say, okay, therefore we should be charging $32 more for this $50 ticket price. It's a matter of what else can I sell that customer because the demand is so high to find ways to generate ancillary revenue on top of optimally pricing that ticket. So that's the job that we've taken on as a company now, more in that consulting mindset to help teams beyond just distributing their tickets, to help them price them as well.
I guess a question on the dynamic pricing in the sports industry, where do you guys think we are in comparison to, say, where the airline industries are? And I mean, I have my own opinion on it, but I'd like to hear what you guys think, and if we'll, reach those points.
Brian?
I think I'd love to hear from Danielle first on this, because I think that she and you are working in the most dynamic market as it relates to tickets, and I work for a league that has no dynamic, variable pricing. I think that it certainly plays into a lot of our pricing decisions, but I'd love to hear you first and then play off of that.
I think, so there's no platform that's more dynamically priced than StubHub. So that since the very inception, it's all about supply and demand meeting. And so you also have situations where people misprice, and it's really what the consumer is willing to pay. The difference with StubHub is that a lot of teams are dynamically pricing up, but they're not dynamically pricing down. And so it's sort of an artificial dynamic pricing situation. Whereas on StubHub, it's really what the consumer is willing to pay, and that's where the seller has to meet. So you have tickets that are, during a recession, going to be, below. If it's the Tuesday night is raining, and you've got a shitty matchup, excuse the language, it's going to be a really low, low price that most teams are not going to be able to bear from a dynamically priced standpoint. So we've just sort of embraced that model where it's really what the ticket can go for. As far as an airline model, a ticket is an asset, right, to be bought or sold. It's very different from the product of an airline ticket. And so it's like a car. You buy a car and you want the ability to be able to resell it. And a ticket, like 30% of people can't make an event. So there's always going to be a resale market for tickets, even if there's a dynamic pricing at the team level. Like we've seen anecdotally, let's use the Giants as an example. They've been very quick to embrace dynamic pricing, and we've seen very, very strong secondary sales in conjunction with that. So it's they complement each other, and you're always going to have people that can't make the event, and that's just the way we actually embrace dynamic pricing.
And I think that the airline industry or the hotel industry, to a large extent, has been totally commoditized. And while certainly ticketing has become more commoditized over the last 10 or 15 years, there's still an affinity to that club. There's still people are still emotionally tied to what it is that they're going to buy. So I think that it's not exactly like airlines or anything else. And the two watchwords that we think about as we think about any kind of pricing, whether it's dynamic or not, is value and sustainability. How are we creating the proper value for every single ticket sold? So if it's a season ticket, it means that sometimes we have to change or redefine what that relationship between the club and the ticket holder is, because you can jump on StubHub and get entry to any single game that you want, anytime you want, or NFL Ticket Exchange, and go there and buy any ticket you want for any game. So what does it mean to be a season ticket holder? Why do I want to make that decision to buy all 10 games for an NFL season up front? And then how is our pricing set up compared to every other seat in the building? One of the big challenges in the NFL is that historically there have been just pricing models that have been there for decades. And we've had clubs as recently as 2 or 3 years ago where every single ticket in the lower bowl was the same price. And then their clubs are asking the question, well, why can't we sell behind the end zone? Well, it's priced the same. Why is it? Well, it's not properly valued. So value is to me the biggest component of how you should price your building. And then sustainability. If you haven't raised prices for 8 years in a row, and then you want to try to recapture all of that when you play well and trying to get a 30, 40, 50% increase, that's not a sustainable model. People are going to leave you. So I think it's having a real understanding over the long term of what your organizational goals are, how you're going to create the proper value, and then how you're going to create a model that's sustainable year after year.
So I think another thing to touch on is how you're using the secondary market data, specifically ticket exchange in the NFL's case, to help teams around the league think about pricing.
Yeah, I mean, we use it a lot, but I think whenever you're looking at a secondary market, it has to be directional. You can't just take, whatever the pricing is on any secondary market for any game and apply it to your overall pricing strategy. We're trying to move 70,000 tickets every single week, and there's not 70,000 tickets that are being moved on a secondary exchange, and most of the sellers are selling 2s or 4s. So they may go fishing and try to get 3x or 4x a ticket price, and if our team looks at that and understands that incorrectly, they may go and outprice themselves from the market for 70,000 tickets. So we try to encourage clubs to be really careful about what they think they're seeing on the secondary market. The other thing is there's not a lot of transparency into what the clearing cost, the clearing price is on some of these exchanges. Now, luckily with Ticket Exchange, we can actually find that out. But otherwise, you're just looking at a list price, and you're assuming either that it got sold or didn't, but you don't really know what price that ticket cleared at. So again, very dangerous.
Give the consumer so we'll give them tools and to actually show them when they're pricing to where they should be pricing. So they'll show on the seat map what tickets in that location have sold for. Because there is
For that particular game or across for the whole
for that
season?
particular
Right.
game.
But at the end of the day, the club doesn't have necessarily transparency into what it actually
Well,
sold
Lou
for.
does.
I
The
do.
Pirates do.
At baseball teams, we do.
Yeah, our
which is great.
partners do.
It's fantastic.
We embrace our partners.
That's because Danielle hates
Thank
me.
you.
No, and we also have 16 college partners. So we have Texas, Michigan. We are integrated now with 16 huge colleges that have insight into what tickets are clearing for. So these universities are using the data to more efficiently price.
Right.
I mean, it's pure and simple.
We see it every single day. So we have an automated report, that'll run at like 3 in the morning. So at 7:30 in the morning, I actually know exactly how much business was conducted on StubHub.
You get up at 6:30 just to go look at
I
that.
do. I get up right away to go look at that. But it's interesting to see every single game, every single price level, like what happened over the last day. So all of a sudden you can start to see trends as well, where maybe there's a game further out where maybe internally we didn't think it had a lot of value, but for some reason on the secondary market, there's been a big spike. So it's like, okay, so what's causing that? Try to learn more about it. Did we run some advertising potentially when we see a spike in StubHub sales at 9 o'clock at night? Did we have a spot that ran on TV that we tagged to say, try to push them to that specific game? Then all of a sudden we saw a large spike in sales on the secondary market. Why didn't they come to the primary? So
And
these
we
are the things that we're trying to figure out.
We'd rather work together to communicate what we did to generate that spike
Right.
and what we think it's all about. I mean, that's the ideal model, is when you're we're a distribution channel, we're sort of filling a need for people that can't go to the game. We'd rather give them the data, and we'd rather have the transparency, frankly.
So here's what's interesting to me is that we took a question about what's happening in dynamic pricing. And in the last 5 to 7 minutes, we've gone down this path of the awesomeness of the secondary market. And don't get me wrong, as it relates to StubHub's relationship with baseball and our relationship with the NFL, there's some great things there. But the mere fact that you asked a question about our teams dynamically pricing their tickets right now, and we've gone down a path of how awesome the secondary market is, speaks volumes for how inefficient still we are at pricing right now our tickets. And to answer your question, any industry right now, like the secondary market is, that's $4 billion in size, tells you that, and oh, by the way, it's an industry that's built off of the inefficiency in pricing, I think tells you alone that we're not there yet from an adoption perspective. We're not there yet from a philosophical perspective of teams or leagues deciding that they want to get better and smarter about pricing their tickets. We are not there from an adoption perspective from teams and leagues and artists and venues utilizing technology to help them do that. And we've got a long way to go. But Ticketmaster and other good companies out there are helping teams and leagues get better about that.
How do you not alienate your season ticket base, which is your core constituents, right? By, if you were truly going to price it efficiently, that would potentially mean there's a par value set, as far as face value. So is anyone really willing to go below that face value?
Absolutely. So I think that the misconception is that you're going to take that $4 billion industry and you're going to close it to zero,
You're not taking
right?
that.
You're never going to happen, right? What you're going to do is you're going to get more efficient at it. You're going to run two objectives in parallel. You're going to price your tickets better both on the season side and the individual side to improve the team's yield, while at the same time continuing to provide that value to the season ticket holder who wants to be able to resell his ticket. Now the key to the team is not so much how do I make sure I price it precisely the right way so that season ticket holder can generate his or her few thousand extra dollars every year on reselling their ticket. The key to the team is enabling the tools to allow that season ticket holder to resell it, to forward it, to transfer it in a convenient way, in a protected way, so that the fan feels protected, the fan's given the opportunity, and the team gets the data. That's what matters the most to the team.
And the other way you don't alienate your season ticket holder is you don't make the only part of the value the price of the ticket.
Right.
Oh, you clearly what you were talking about, sustainability, creating an experience that's worth investing in as a season ticket holder?
Well, so I mean, it's a good question. In particular, how have you seen the expectations for a season ticket holder change? I mean, in particular, the last 10 years, but maybe even the last 2 to 3 years.
I mean, just in the last few years, you know, for years, the number one reason people didn't renew their season tickets is they didn't use all the tickets, right? So at the end of the year, they looked at their season ticket booklet or in their drawer or wherever they kept their tickets. I've got all these tickets that I didn't use. I wasted money. I mean, that's literally cash sitting there that I burned. Forget it. I don't want it. So what this allows you to do with the secondary market being as, you know, available as it is for folks, we use it as a tool to encourage people. Listen, if you can't make some games, we have a flexible exchange policy where you can use tickets for another game, et cetera. But there's also an opportunity for you to resell them on the secondary market, and obviously we point them to StubHub. All of a sudden you see retention rates climbing, at least in our case, from what I've seen over the last few years, because people now are using more of their tickets. Our usage rate on season tickets is higher than it's been in any year in our case since the first year of our ballpark opening in 2001.
And I will say just, we do a ton of analysis with the ticket exchange. We actually have a closed market with the Patriots. And we were surprised to find that people who are putting their tickets on are actually renewing at a pretty high rate because
Correct.
of the value.
Correct.
Cole, I'd like to actually, one of the products that you guys have is Price Master, and I'd like you to actually provide some perspective, because I think it's a very interesting product and that you're providing to teams.
Sure. So again, if you go back to the comment that I made a second ago about how we've shifted in our mindset as a company, one of the pillars of that new kind of direction and mindset is that we built out a new technology called Price Master, which is a engine that is integrated directly into our back-end ticketing system called Arctics that many of our teams and clients use. And we partner with a company called Market Share Partners. And we actually went out, and I think as a lot of people in this room know, there are a number of companies out there that have been helping not just teams, but businesses and other industries altogether better price their products. And a few of those had been operating in our space for quite a while, and we looked at partnering with some of those. We looked at developing it from scratch. And we found a great group out of Los Angeles called Market Share Partners, about 150 plus employees that have been around for 10 years. It worked with another number of Fortune 500 companies and industries, helping them better price their products. And they came to us and said, look, we've got the smartest people because we've got a ton of PhDs on staff. We have access to Google Analytics. And oh, by the way, we're going to help you, Ticketmaster, write your system from scratch, which meant that we didn't have to take an existing product and force it into our back-end system, Arctics. So we used their strong institutional knowledge and our product development prowess, and we built a dynamic pricing ticketing system called Price Master that we just launched. We just came out of alpha process in the last 2 months, and now we're in beta with a couple of clients, and we'll be launching full force this year in 2/12. And Lou was alluding to this earlier. There's several critical components to pricing your tickets, and we could spend half the day alone just talking about what all of those components and variables are to get better, to get smarter. But where you really get it right, and most of you who are at Sloan and getting your MBA right now are probably studying this, where you really get it right is the time and dedication you take to building that model from the get-go. That model serves as the foundation for everything that you do going forward. Then you have our job, and what we've done is we've created the right algorithms on the back end to then layer on top of that model to help these teams on a literally minute-by-minute basis price their tickets better. And then, of course, the final component of that on the technology side is that the tool itself allows the team minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day to price their tickets based on what the insights are telling, based on the insights that are being driven from the model itself. So that hopefully gives you a quick snapshot of what we've done.
I mean, I looked at it, and in addition to all the information that you're getting on the customer, it also has things like the weather, which I thought was very relevant and interesting, especially for outdoor sports. Okay, so I'm going to shift the discussion a little bit away from pricing and talk about stadiums and arenas and the appropriate sizes. So the question here is, what are the shifts or changes that you guys have seen with the stadium and arena size, and also the fan base, season ticket holders versus individuals?
From an NFL perspective, I think you're going to see stadiums. You have seen some stadiums come down in size. I think that's going to be the trend moving forward. Obviously, some of our two of our last three newest stadiums, MetLife Stadium and Dallas Cowboy Stadium, are really big, but I think those markets can support that. But I think generally speaking, you're looking for stadium sizes to come down a little bit. Again, trying to get that supply and demand curve in where we want it to be. And for us, we understand that having full and vibrant stadiums is integral to the success of the overall league. You know, obviously television revenue is probably the biggest stream that we have in the NFL, but the reason it is because people want to be at that game, and they want to be there because they see full and vibrant stadiums. So we want to make sure that we always create an environment where we can attain that, and then we can continue to drive pricing where we think is appropriate. And so building, 80,000 seat stadiums, I think, is going to be much more it will not be the norm moving forward.
Yeah. When baseball made that move, years ago, most of the new ballparks are smaller than what they were in their previous editions, because when you have 81 games and you look at it and you say, I have 50,000 seats to sell every game, I got over 4 million tickets I need to move. That's a lot. And even if you're selling, 48,000, 47,000 a game, there's still plenty of nights where it's not sold out. So again, it's managing the supply and demand curve. But the other thing is, by building smaller, more intimate ballparks, arenas, if you do it the right way, you can actually create more preferred seating, premium seating, because it's more intimate, closer to the action, which again, will also drive prices even higher. So baseball was ahead of this a long time ago. Obviously, we learned a lot from the Red Sox over the years. I mean, obviously, I'm not sure if the Sox still have the smallest capacity just because they keep adding on every year, so I've lost track. But I think they're around 39,000-ish. Our capacity is 38.5. The new Miami Stadium this year will be about 38,000. I think Minnesota's around 39. You just see all these other ballparks getting right under that 40. One of the smartest things that the Phillies did a few years ago is they didn't go too big on their capacity for the ballpark. Now they play to 104% capacity every game. So there was 3 teams that sold out every game last year in Major League Baseball: the Red Sox, the Phillies, and the Giants. The largest capacity of all of them is about 41, 42,000. Granted, they're all big markets, but they learned by compressing the amount of supply available, they increased the demand and they're able to sell out every game. And nothing helps you drive more revenue, more season ticket sales, et cetera, than having a sold-out ballpark every night where people then are, in theory, being turned away if they've never heard of StubHub or some of the other secondary options.
And I think, I'm sorry.
That's okay, Brian.
I think more than the sheer size of the stadium, it's how are you configuring your stadium? What different products are you putting in your stadium, and where are you putting those products? I think for a long time, and maybe more so in the NFL, because of the way that new stadiums were financed, which was basically financed through club seat waivers, we were incenting clubs to put more premium seating in than they really needed, because that was a way to get to the financing. So I think that in our new financing plan G4, we've kind of addressed that to make sure that we aren't doing things on the financing side that have unintended consequences on the sales and marketing side. And the other thing I'll just say is that I think we've seen in the last few years is the major renovations that have taken place with the new buildings that are being constructed. The sales and marketing people are part of the process much earlier. It used to be that kind of architects and financial guys were the ones deciding, here's the stadium we're going to build, we need to finance it, there's 270 suites because that's how we get to the number. And we all know that there were too many buildings that were over-suited, had too many club seats, and maybe in the wrong area, because sometimes we got too clever by half. We decided we were going to put a club in the 50th row because we could get premium pricing. And at the end of the day, this is still a real estate play, and people want to sit close to the action. So we've got a number of buildings where we have to reconfigure some things because we're trying to get the most premium prices in places that aren't premium parts of the building. So I think that's really more the trend going forward than whether it's the buildings 80, 70, or 60. I think that's going to be largely a function of the market and what the team thinks that they can sell through. But it's more about how the buildings are configured.
I agree with Brian. I mean, we, to some extent, our visibility into how the stadiums and the arenas and venues and theaters in general are changing in size and scope is really limited to what gets manifested and what doesn't. But what we're seeing, a couple of things that we're seeing that's interesting is we're seeing that the popularity of luxury suites is waning pretty significantly. It's still an important asset for teams to have to offer corporations and strategic partners. but they're doing so a little bit more tactically. They're not having as many. They're using some of them more in loge fashion, things like that. The other thing is that I've seen, Brian, I think was touching on this, I've seen a significant increase in arena amenities, not so much on the stadium side, but in the newer arenas that we've seen built in the last, say, 5 years, you're seeing a significant increase in those amenities. Why? Because we've got to do a better job as an industry. We have to continue doing a better job as an industry, particularly as technology continues to improve, say, on the television side and being able to watch a game from any screen. We've got to do a better job as an industry at giving the fan the absolute best experience we can at the game, in the arena or inside the stadium. So arenas are taking, and stadiums both, are taking note of that and creating better experiences, not just inside the bowl during the game, but whether it's certain clubs or bars. I was at All-Star this weekend with the NBA, and my buddy Charlie Freeman at the Orlando Magic took us upstairs and was kind enough to show us the Skybar Lounge, the 360 Lounge that overlooks all of Orlando. We didn't stop off for a $5,000 bottle table, but we did hang out for a little while and look around, and it was an amazing amenity at a great brand new arena to help draw those casual fans to the arena for the game. So I think that's what we're seeing a lot of change in as well.
And I think, I mean, that's just another question along those lines. What do you think the future is for new seats or new types of seats or seats with amenities that might come in the next year or 2 years, maybe that you've seen a couple teams do that isn't widely known? They're utilizing those amenities to improve the value of the ticket. So we're seeing more, the smarter teams are finding ways to leverage those assets and take a standard $60 ticket and attach to it an opportunity to go out on the court afterwards, to go into the press room and listen to the press conference afterwards, to sit in the penalty box 30 minutes before the game and walk out on the ice afterwards. And they're able to take these fantastic experiences. Some of them use the assets and amenities in the arenas, and some of them don't. And then take the standard value of a $50, $60 ticket and turn it into a $150 ticket, and 500 fans per game are willing to pay for that, and you just generated a significant lift on what is normally a $50 to $60 ticket. But what does that do for the customer who maybe can't afford that ticket? Are we pricing out the average fan?
Well, I think based on, the model Cole just laid out, if the ticket's $56, you still can come for $56.
Right.
But if you want that enhanced experience, you can buy that a la carte. So I think, that's a good model to still allow people to get into the buildings, but have this elevated experience if that's what they desire, as opposed to bundling it, which I think was the model before, which is it's a $200 ticket and here's what you get with it. I think now you have a little more choice and customers can make that decision to either just buy the ticket or to buy the entire experience.
To answer your question also, due to the increased liquidity of the market, right, the transferability, they'll buy the ticket and then they may subsidize their season ticket package by selling off, in the case of the NBA, 20 games to subsidize it. So they'll get that experience so everyone sort of wins. I mean, they've defrayed some of the cost, and the team's getting their revenue, and the consumers being able to afford the game.
Back to the question was, what do we see coming forward? I don't know if anybody has that answer yet, but I think what we're seeing is a lot more teams and arenas are becoming a lot more flexible with their inventory. So let's say you built a ballpark in our case with 65 suites. Well, we're all down to 61 because we converted 4 of them into a different type of a club, like a shared season ticket product. We're going to take maybe 10 or 11 more suites next year and convert it into something else. You have to be flexible to keep moving with the demand of the people who are buying these. The one thing we hear, and I've talked to a lot of other folks around the industry, people don't want to have 15, 18 tickets every single game. And when it comes to baseball, it's 81 times. To have 15 seats in a suite for 15 games in a row, where you have to order food every night. After a while, you've done it for 10, 12 years, you know what, this is a lot of work. It really is. Some companies, many companies have people hired full-time, and maybe 2, just to handle that. That doesn't make a lot of sense for them long-term. They're willing to still spend the same amount of money, but we need to repackage it. So we say, okay, well, maybe instead of X for your suite, we could do something a little bit smaller, a little bit more higher end, your food is included, you get all these other additional experiences, and it's like, oh, okay, that's good, that's what I'm looking for. So we're seeing some traction in that area. I know other clubs have as well, but it's not just your standard, here's a suite, good luck, go get them, especially when you have 81 games.
As we've been thinking through some major innovations that will probably happen over the next 5 to 7 years in the NFL, we've been working with some architectural firms to talk about how to create more flexibility on our premium seat levels and our suite levels. Everything from movable walls, so you can make a suite for 6 people or 60 people, depending on what the need is. So I think that that's something that you're seeing already in some of the newer buildings is that they've already got an eye on. We don't know what the next thing is, but we know it will change, and we've got to create maximum flexibility within these buildings.
Correct.
I mean, just as an anecdote, when I was speaking with David Gill from Manchester United, they actually do that. They flex their actual stadium based on their higher demand games, which makes sense.
But
the other thing we have to do too is engage that fan when they're in the arena more, particularly if you think about the participation right now with those fans on Facebook, on Twitter, and the fact that they are on that mobile device, despite the fact that Cuban wants them to be off of that mobile device and focusing. The reality is that they still are focusing on that device they're holding in the hand. So the other thing that we're seeing is that teams are doing more to engage with those fans while they're in the arena. We saw just last year, in 2011 alone, we saw a 7x increase in Twitter activity at the game. So a 2x increase in Facebook and Foursquare, but they were already well ahead of 70% of fans said they were active on Facebook while they were at a game. So that was already there, the activity on the Facebook front, but on Twitter we've seen more activity there. So teams have got to find a way to engage while they're in these games.
The infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so that's, from a CapEx perspective, you're going to have to ramp up your infrastructure to handle. I mean, no, at All-Star, on Saturday night, there was like a Twitter, it just didn't work because people couldn't get on, they couldn't get online. So.
In the NFL, it's not even a CapEx issue. I mean, it's just the technology just isn't there.
That's right.
And it changes constantly.
So if there are any MIT engineers here, if you can figure out how to wire a stadium for Wi-Fi, you're going to do very well for yourself because we can't figure it out just yet. And the interesting thing is we spent so much time, probably over the last, let's call it 10 years, how do we allow people to, download content? How do we push content to them? And it's flipped, right? Everybody wants to upload. Everybody wants to affirm that they're at this really amazing event.
Share it.
And share it with the world. And I think that that's great for us because that's like a commercial to everybody's social network that this is a really cool and interesting place to be. But to Danielle's point, we have to make sure that we have the infrastructure that's going to allow for that.
So speaking of technology, we've obviously seen a lot of advances over the last 2 to 3 years. Maybe just provide some perspective on ticket delivery in particular. Throw that out there.
I think if there's been any movement in the last 4 or 5 years that has gained the most steam, it's been mostly on digital adoption. We talked a little bit about this on our prep call, but we have half a dozen or more teams who have now gone away from mailing season ticket books. One of my good buddies, Kyle Brunson from the Atlanta Hawks, is out here. Should throw out his email address and phone number. Everybody track him down afterwards. But Kyle and the Atlanta Hawks are one of the teams that have done just that. They've told season ticket holders, you're no longer going to get your book of tickets in the mail. Now, some teams have said at the end of the season, we'll mail you a book of season tickets because fans keep them for commemorative purposes. But we're going to upload your tickets into sort of the digital state, what we call account manager, where you can manage your tickets. And then the fan can decide how they want to receive that ticket from that point. They can print it out on a PDF sheet of paper. They can have it sent to their mobile device. They can attach it to their driver's license. Or in the case of Atlanta and Phoenix and some other teams, the teams actually mailed out season ticket cards so that they sent, if you normally bought 4 season tickets, you got 4 cards, and each one of those cards had a ticket on it, and then the fans could use that to get into the game. The reason this is so important and why we see adoption increasing, and I should say why we see interest increasing significantly and where we believe we're going to see adoption increasing significantly in the next couple of years is because what it provides the teams by way of data and insights is tremendous. So in the case of, sorry Kyle to call you out again, in the case of the Hawks and plug those guys, they've seen just year over year, they just started the season ticket cards this year, and they've seen year over year a 500% increase in ticket transfer activity within their club sections, which is primarily comprised of season ticket holders. So let's just go ahead and say 500% increase in season ticket holder transfer. Now think about what that does from a team's visibility into what that ticket's doing, right? If you can imagine, as Lou was talking about, whether it's baseball with 81 games or it's basketball with 42 games, you've got a lot of games, you've got a lot of tickets that generally go unused, whether you resell them or transfer them. As a team, I want visibility into what's happening because I want to know where my ticket ultimately went and then who ultimately walked into my door. So the fact that the Atlanta Hawks are now able to see more tickets, you see more fans and those tickets changing hands is huge. In the case of Miami, theirs has gone up 125% with Miami Heat. So overall, the ticket living in the digital space is giving these teams greater insights so that they can market back to these other fans, so they can turn them in from single ticket buyers to package buyers to plan buyers and bring more people in the door.
It's a pretty simple, equation. The easiest way to increase your attendance is to get a person who already came to come to at least one more game, right? So this allows you to have that ability to know what Cole did with his ticket, right? In the past, he would have just maybe handed it off to somebody. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know if they came. I would know if the ticket was used, but I had no idea who was actually in the seat. Now there's this whole chain to say, okay, Cole forwarded to Brian. Brian resold it on StubHub. Oh, just kidding. I know Brian would do that. But and all of a sudden, I see
NFL ticket exchange.
Yeah, and then I see how the person came in and used their ticket at the ballpark or the arena, and then maybe if there's some loaded value components on there, I know where they spent money, I know what they've done while they're in the ballpark. Now I have a better shot of going after that person to potentially upsell them to something else. But the key is knowing who is actually using your tickets. And for so many years, we didn't know.
I think the key, but we're forgetting about the consumer here. So the key is giving the consumer the best possible experience, right? So yes, of course, from the team perspective, you want the data, you want to know like the lifespan of your ticket. But I really think it's really about the fan and providing the most convenient and safest and most effective way of delivering a ticket. And from a digital perspective, it's clearly that's. I mean, we embrace it, we love it. From a mobile perspective, we've seen our mobile sales go up 500% in the last year, and it'll be 10% of our overall revenue by the end of 2012. So we're all about the fan. I think that's focusing on the fan. It's a great way if you allow open transfer and transferability. I think you get the data, and you also provide the consumers the best possible experience and the easiest possible experience.
One of the things that Lou touched on that I think we lose a little bit in this conversation is we have a lot of customers, and we don't even know who they are. Correct. And I'm not even talking about when you move a ticket in the secondary market, but how many share plan partners are there, where Lou and I are sharing tickets, but Lou's name is on the account, and the club has no idea I even exist. So by moving that ticket into the digital space, hopefully the clubs will be able to market to me, who I really am a season ticket holder, even though I don't have any official standing with the club. And now we have the opportunity to upsell or cross-sell that customer as well. So this is a really important issue for clubs.
Make you feel special.
And make me feel special.
Some of those fantastic benefits.
So I guess, but what are the concerns of this totally digital ticket mindset, if there are any? There aren't any.
What are the concerns?
Yeah, I mean, what are the
Oh,
concerns that you guys have or are hearing from customers? What are
Something
the
tells me
challenges?
my concern and Danielle's concerns are going to be two different concerns altogether.
I hope so.
Let's hear it.
Our
been boring up
concerns
here.
are what the consumers' concerns are. And so we listen to the consumers. And from the consumer perspective, it's that, whoa, my tickets are paperless, digital, but paperless. So there's the music model, which currently there's an option, there's paperless, and you go and you have to show your driver's license or credit card used to purchase, like with Miley Cyrus, which was a very confusing proposition for the consumer. Caused a lot of confusion, with StubHub, clearly. And just was not a great value proposition overall. Because Granny was buying her, granddaughter the tickets and had to show up and wait in some green room to let the person in. So that's not good for anybody. It's just not good for filling the arena. That's just not, it's very severely limiting. Open transferability, so we get a lot of, like the Niners are paperless to some degree, and so there's a lot of confusion. Can I still transfer, can I still sell my tickets on anywhere I want? Craigslist, eBay, StubHub, wherever it is, or does it have to be within Ticketmaster's closed loop ticket exchange environment? That's not great for anyone, a closed loop environment. So that's what we focus on. We focus on open transferability, whether it's my platform, someone else's platform, just the ability for the consumer to reach as many distribution platforms as possible using the digital experience. So that's really the...
So that's, and Danielle has a very valid concern. The irony is that I guess we probably have two different perspectives on what's the convenient what's most convenient for the fan. Our data is telling us that the fan's saying what's most convenient to me is ensuring that I get a ticket. And to us, you know, you ask what the concerns are. There are two primary concerns for me. One on the high demand on sale side, one on the supporting my team and league partners side. On the high demand on sale side, my biggest concern is that 12-year-old who really wants to see John Mayer, who's on tour right now, can't get a ticket because he's getting elbowed out during the on sale process because 200,000 plus automated systems or bots are logging out the system trying to buy tickets. He didn't get his ticket. He walks away crying because he can't, or she walks away crying because she can't go see John Mayer. That's my big concern. Paperless helps us thwart that. The second concern that we have is on the team and the league side. When again you go back to that point Brian made about how do we ensure that we know who those customers are, and we've talked a lot about those insights around the transfer of a ticket. If a team says, I want to ensure that a ticket remains in the digital space. I don't want it to be printed out. I don't want there to exist the possibility for me to print out a PDF sheet of paper and hand it off to Lou in the bar. Because at that moment that happened, that broke the chain and I lost insight into who Lou was. If a team says, therefore I want to distribute my tickets only to a phone, only to a season ticket card, only to a credit card, and from there, the season ticket holder can decide what he or she wants to do with it. They can send it around and forward and transfer it around. That's what we want to ensure the teams have the right to decide to do. If that's how they want to distribute their tickets, they should very much have the right to do that, just like any other content holder should have the right to decide how his or her content is distributed.
Except that the consumer considers the ticket to be their asset to decide, right? So there's a disconnect on the rights holder being the content owner and then what the consumer expects, the expectations. That's just going to have to be met at some point. And
I mean, a good example, I guess, is, you know, this conference was sold out 3 weeks ago, and I couldn't resell my badge. I didn't have the right to go up.
You didn't?
Yeah. I tried.
I tried.
Like, I was calling everybody in the industry that I knew that hadn't signed up yet, and I couldn't resell my badge. Why? Because I had to show up and get my badge here. But that's the right as SSAC, as a content holder, to decide how those badges are distributed, because they're valuable products.
But you're not trying to sell 81 home games and convince people to. I mean, it's such a different animal. I mean, this is a product. It's sports and music. Music, by the way, the bots is a very easy excuse. I think the issue with music is the supply is actually quite limited. There's a lot less available to the general public for an on sale. Then it's just not that it's very opaque on the supply side. So that's a whole nother conversation. So as far as, you know, this versus a sporting event, it's just not the same. Like Brian's talking about creating experience to convince people. The no-show rates are 20%, right? You're trying to convince people to come and not watch their fantastic TV. You know, this is a apples and oranges example.
Except for the fact that the fundamental discussion here is whether or not content holders have the rights to determine how their products are distributed.
The funny thing to me is we're having this conversation, we're dancing around the big word that nobody wants to say, which is brokers, right? Because that's what this is what this really revolves around.
Yeah.
And you know, you're talking about the bots. It's about. I mean, but brokers are a big part of your business, and our business. And you know.
And I'm okay with that. I want brokers to be a part of my
sellers.
business. I don't want scalpers to be a part of my business. There's a difference.
What's the difference?
What is the difference?
The scalp, in our definition, the scalper is the guy who tries to find a way around the system and using technology to try and block that 12-year-old out from buying a
Why is
ticket.
it different?
The broker is the guy who works fairly with our teams and with leagues and with other entities to sell tickets in the right way.
But isn't it incumbent? I mean, again, I hate to be in a position of defending, you know, the broker community, but I don't know how. This
Maybe I
happens.
should stop you right
You
now.
don't look that shaken up over.
No, but I'm not because
We're in the value chain.
because they are a big. You know, what nobody wants to talk about is that brokers are some of, if not totally, our biggest customers on the sports side.
Absolutely.
And you know, if we're really in a twist about the bots being able to get, you know, the tickets, well then it's incumbent upon the rights holder to figure out a way to keep that from happening. But I think once somebody is in possession of that ticket, and if reselling that ticket is totally legal, at that point I think.
They think
You know.
they have the right. That's the most important thing.
Right.
They think they have the right.
So I'm going to provide just two pieces of perspective on it. So at the Patriots, we actually have a closed market, and where only our season ticket holders and waitlist members can season ticket holders can sell their tickets or post them, and only waitlist people can buy them, and it's at face value. For us, we like that because then we know everyone who's in our stadium, and we have accountability for people who are in our stadium from a fan behavior perspective. So that's just perspective on our end from the team side, which is different than the consumer side. And the second thing is we have a much older fan base, so the digital stuff is great. And as a data junkie, I obviously want it, but we also need to take care of our customers who are, who still do not pay online and are sending in checks or coming down to the ticket office and paying in cash. So just want to provide that perspective too. Okay, so I have a bunch of great questions here from the audience. They all came in via text and Twitter. So I'm going to start with this one. Does advanced ticketing analytics threaten the value of being a partial plan ticket holder?
I'm going to say no. In fact, it could probably enhance it. Not even probably, it does enhance it. As I mentioned earlier, and I've seen other things recently, folks tweeting and other people pontificating, is this the end of season tickets as we know it, or partial plans, or what does this look like? And as I said earlier, this is an opportunity for, as a season ticket holder, to get in there and be able to use the secondary market to your advantage. I don't see it as a problem at all. I mean, maybe I'm in the dark here, but I really think that across leagues, and I can just speak from our case in Pittsburgh, and I've seen some baseball data, like the season ticket numbers are actually climbing. Renewal rates are getting higher. New sales are getting higher. And again, you could talk about the NFL, and if someone wants to touch from the NBA, I mean, that's pretty much a unique situation with a lockout, but I think last year the NBA grew their season ticket base, correct, Chris? So, and the retention rate was higher. Like, this is the stuff we're seeing, and we're seeing, in our case, more and more people buying partial plans. So to say that the secondary market is having an adverse impact on us we're seeing the complete opposite.
Yeah, the NFL is in a little bit of a different situation because we have such limited supply. But from a baseball or hockey or basketball situation, I think that these analytics actually allow for greater segmentation within your customer set, because if you have somebody who's a value customer, and we're dynamically pricing certain not hot games lower, and you want to take your kid to go see a Ranger game, you pick the ones that are most affordable, and that works for both parties. It works for the club, it works for the consumer.
Okay. Next one. From a fan's point of view, when is the best time to purchase tickets?
Upfront, full season.
Thanks, Brian.
This one.
You said from a fan's perspective, right? Definitely.
I'm a fan.
You need to leave like Costanza now. Like, that's a high note. Just walk off.
Thank you very much.
20 minutes before the game. 20 minutes. I mean, it's a perishable product, right? So, this is depending on if you know where you want to sit, then clearly it's 2 weeks out or whatever. But from a fan with a budget, 20 minutes before the game.
But I think that's a great perspective. Depends on where you want to sit.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
And how much you're willing to pay.
Exactly.
Because, Lou, you can provide some perspective on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, because one of the things that we saw looking at our secondary market data provided by StubHub was that the prices escalate to a certain point, X amount of days out before a game, and then as you start getting very close to that game, that number gets very soft, and it starts to decline rapidly, and sometimes, even for a big game, it's going to be under face, especially at the last minute, okay? So there's a possibility if you wait a long time, you might, but then you might not. So there's a little bit of a game that you have to watch out for, but traditionally, if you waited until that day of game 2 hours beforehand, it's possible you may be able to get a ticket at a cheaper price because there are some folks looking to just get rid of their inventory, but you may not. But that's over a long haul with 81 games. There's a lot of, soft games. In our case, we play to about 70% capacity on average for the year. It's not 70% every night. We had 17 games sell out and we're at standing room only. Then you also had 15 games where you're under 60% capacity. So there's that wide range. Some games, that price drops fairly low. Other games, it never drops. But on average, it does start to decrease a couple hours before the game or day of game. So it's a risk people have to take.
So just another question that I think to throw out there. Maybe just go down the line and you guys can answer this. Groupon, friend or foe?
Well, Nathan, our CEO, would get mad at me if I answered anything other than friend because we'd created a joint venture with him. That aside, they're a friend, and they're a friend in a couple of with a couple of important points. One is that they're a friend, especially when used the right way and used smartly. I mean, we created our joint venture Groupon Live with Groupon for a variety of reasons, but mostly because it gave us an opportunity to reach what we call the casual fan. A significant population of event goers say they would have liked to have gone to an event had they known about it. And so any company that has a robust database and an engaged user base and the right way to reach them is a possible friend if used the right way. So we certainly believe that for not only Groupon, but some of the other distribution partners and companies that are out there that can help us reach that casual fan.
I agree wholeheartedly. It's really all about either a friend, but you got to be able to do it strategically, because if you don't go about it the right way, you could really wind up damaging your brand significantly. So you have to be very, very careful how you go about it, whether it's Groupon, Google Offers, Travelocity. I mean, there's a million channels that you can go through to try to move tickets.
Right.
But if you're not going about it in a strategic way, you're really going to hurt yourself. And people are going to sit around and be looking for cheap offers for big games when that's not what you want.
Yeah, I would agree with Lou. I think as many distribution channels as possible is great for the consumer, but I think from a marketing perspective, I think you need to be really careful of how you protect your brand and how you package the deal. You know, oftentimes, clearly, the Groupon offers, we're going to see even lower prices on our channel or on eBay or wherever it is. So it's all about just packaging it properly and protecting the integrity of your brand.
Yeah, I think to frame it up just as Groupon is probably not doing justice to the space. I think that there are already many more players in the space. I think there are going to be even more. And as I sit up here with my league or club hat on, I think it's important that we understand that in the long term, I think we're more important to them than they will ever be to us. And so getting the right business terms for the deal that you do, whether it's with Groupon or somebody else, is incredibly important. The model that they had in place was, you wanted a 50% discount, and they kept 50% of the sale price. I would not recommend to any NFL club that they do that deal. And I think that having NFL tickets on their platform is going to be, more of a boon to them than it will be to us based on the amount of tickets they can move. So I think it's about getting the right business deal. And to Danielle's point, one of the things that we think long and hard about, and I know you guys do too, is what does being in that channel do to our brand? And we better be really sure that it doesn't have any negative impact.
What expectations does it set at the consumer level?
That too.
I mean, I will say that I think it's a challenge, and I question the strength of the customer who comes from it, right? There's been a lot of research that actually shows that those aren't repeat customers, and they might not be the customers that you want. But I mean, Cole, to your point, I think it's very valid that you're reaching a totally different audience.
But as new players get in, you got Amazon Local, and you start to look at that brand and the way that they treat their customers and their attention to their customer service. And if they are willing to do deals where we're adding value and not cutting price, then I think we start to get to a completely different place, and one that we should consider much more seriously than maybe a one-off Groupon offer.
Correct.
All right, I'm gonna thank you guys for what I found to be a very enlightening panel.
Thank you.
So I just want to say one more thing. If you are interested in more ticketing, there is a talk going on in room 312 at 10:20 called Winning Strategies for Ticket Pricing. It's by a Harvard professor, Rob Stavins, and just wanted to let you know as this might be the right audience for that.
Thanks, Jess.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.